Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing an Ice Barrier $30 budget build deck profile. So I'm really excited for this one because Freezing Chains just came out, and I am super excited to show you guys this deck because it is a really amazing deck that you can build for just 30 bucks. This has nothing in it added to it outside of the original structure decks where I used just the cards that I could get from the structure deck, Freezing Chains. Everything from this structure deck, everything in this deck is in this particular box, which is pretty cool to be able to say that you can build the deck straight out of the box for just buying 3 of the structure decks, which is amazing. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because we have all those awesome rewards you guys, like getting your name scripts for every single video, getting a signed card to the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Revealer of the Ice Barrier. So Revealer is a really good card in the deck because this card basically gets you a 1 card, it's essentially a 2 card Super Trish, which is really cool, or Trishula Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier, or it can get you into a regular copy of Trishula, which is really cool. So what this card does is while you control another Ice Barrier monster, your opponent cannot tribute summon monsters, and you can only use each of the following effects of this card once per turn. Also, you can discard a card from your hand to special summon 1 Ice Barrier tuner monster from your deck, and also you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except for water monsters. And if you would discard a card to activate the effect, or excuse me, if you would discard a card from your hand or graveyard to activate an Ice Barrier's effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead to resolve that effect, which is a really good card effect to be able to not have to pay costs for some of your cards. We then play 3 copies of the Speaker of the Ice Barrier. Speaker is really good because you can combo this card with Revealer, and it actually gets the copy of Trish. If you can get both of these in your hand at the same time with any other card that you can discard, you essentially get a Trishula, which is really nice. But basically what this card does is while you control another Ice Barrier monster, while you control another Ice Barrier monster, defense position monsters your opponent control cannot change your battle position, and you can only use each of the following effects of this card once per turn. If you control an Ice Barrier monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you control an Ice Barrier monster, you manage this card from your graveyard to special summon 1 token to your side of the field that's a level 1/0/0 water type, which is really cool just to get you an additional token on your side of the field. Now, the last card that actually gets us Trishula or either version of Trishula on our side of the field extremely easily is Hexa, the Spirit of the Ice Barrier. So this card is really, really good. I played as a 2-of in this particular build because it's just overall really helpful. And then it has the ability that while you control another Ice Barrier monster, your opponent's monster loses 500 attack and defense. And during your main phase, you can send 1 level 3 or lower Ice Barrier monster from your deck to the graveyard. And if you do, this card's level becomes the same as that monster. So you can level manipulate this card to be either a 2, 1, or 1, 2, or 3, which is kind of cool, to be able to just manipulate level. So basically 4 plus 4 is 8, and then plus 3, if you change this to a level 3, gets you into a Trishula Dragon, Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier. Or if you have the if its effect gets negated to send to the graveyard, you can go into a regular copy of Trishula off of its effect as well, which is super helpful just to be able to get you those additional monsters on your side of the field, with me having extremely easy access to those cards. We then play 3 copies of General Wayne of the Ice Barrier. General Wayne I like as a 3-of in this particular build, in the budget build. I probably won't play it at 3 in the other build. I might play it at 2 and maybe 3. I don't know. I've got to play test around with it a little bit more, but I know it will at least be a 2-of because this card is insane. Spells and traps sent to the graveyard, to your opponent's graveyard, are banished instead. Now there's a lot of cards ever since Breakthrough Skill actually got released that just banish themselves from the graveyard. Even in this deck, they banish themselves from the graveyard to be able to use their effects again or use added bonus effects. So this card is really good just to banish additional cards. It's kind of like Macrocosmos, but just for spell and traps. It also has a really cool effect that if your opponent controls a monster, it has the ability that if your opponent controls a monster and you control an Ice Barrier monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if this card is normal or special summon, then you get to add 1 Ice Barrier spell or trap from your deck to your hand. So it's also a searcher for your spell and traps, which is insanely good, which is why I'm debating just going ahead and playing this card at 3-of in my particular Ice Barrier full deck profile, which is going to be out very, very soon, guys. So we're then going to be playing 2 copies of Defender. The main reason you play Defender is to send it to graveyard off your copy of Spirit to be able to get it to a level 3. It also has the ability that while you control another Ice Barrier monster and your opponent controls, your opponent monster cannot declare an attack if the attack is greater than the defense of your monster, which is pretty cool just to be able to protect your monsters. And then we play 2 copies of Prior of the Ice Barrier. So Prior is kind of a good and a bad card at the same time. It's probably one of the most powerful cards, but it also has one of the worst drawbacks in the entire archetype, which is really sad because this card could have been like the saving grace of our Ice Barrier deck, but back in the day, but it just, they gave it too hard of a restriction. So what it does is if you control an Ice Barrier monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, but you can't special summon level 5 or higher monsters this turn. You special summon this card this way. That's bad, because then you can't special summon this card, you can't special summon anything like any of your synchros or anything else. But it also has a really good effect that you can tribute this card to target one of your Ice Barrier monsters in your graveyard and special summon that target. So, overall, it's a really good card, but in the same time, it's not, because you have the downside to be able to, like, not be able to special summon it from your hand and then special summon level 5s, which we play a few level 5s in the deck. So it's a good card, and it's not at the same time. We then play a single copy of Medium of the Ice Barrier. Oh, I will mention this too. If you special summon it from the graveyard, it doesn't count. It only counts if it's special summoned by its own effect. So if you use something like a copy of Surface, for example, or Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier to get it back on your side of the field, its effect will not go off to be able to prevent you from special summoning stuff, which is why I play it as a 2-of in here. Kind of work around it, which is kind of cool. So what Medium does is if you control 4 or more cards, then, or if your opponent controls 4 more cards than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand, and your opponent can not only activate 1 spell or trap this turn, which is why this card is definitely a 1-of in the build. It's an insanely good card, and you definitely need to play this card as 1-of. We then play, for the other cards, we're playing 2 copies of Silent Angler, because you can special summon it to your side of the field, and it gives you an additional level 4 to be able to use as a synchro material. We play a single copy of Moral Inglacia. Moral Inglacia is really good because it has the ability that it must be special summoned from your hand by banishing exactly, or having exactly 5 water monsters in your graveyard. And if this card is special summoned, you can discard 2 random cards from your hand, from your opponent's hand, which is really cool. It just rips 2 cards out of your opponent's hand, and it's just an overall really good card. It's really easy to summon too, because you can just about get the cards that you need on the field in the first turn with all the different plays you have. Because think about it this way. If you normal summon this, discard a card, special summon out your copy of Speaker, and then you have the Spirit as well that you special summoned off of this, and then you synchro for Super Trish, then you can essentially have 4 water monsters right off the bat just with this one, or with these 3 and 1 discard card. So it kind of depends on what else you have in your hand to be able to get your Moral Inglacia's effect off. We then play 3 copies of Gen X Undying because it's a great starter card that when it's normal summon, you can send 1 water monster from your deck to the graveyard to add a Gen X controller from your deck to your hand, which is pretty helpful just to be able to get you additional plays off, which is why I played as a 1-of, and it serves as a tuner. We then play a single copy of Gen X controller because you can use this card to synchro summon into your copies of your synchro monsters, so it's an overall really good card to play as a 1-of. So that rounds up the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Surface, which is essentially Monster Reborn for the deck, which is really, really good. It lets you bring back a card that's level 3 or lower to your side of the field, which is super nice. We then play 3 copies of Freezing Chain. So Freezing Chain is actually what the structure deck is named after. Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier has the ability, when this card is activated, you get to target 1 level 4 or lower Ice Barrier in your graveyard and special summon it, which then you can bring back something like Prior and then use Prior's effect to special summon something else. Then it has the ability also that while you control level 3, while you control 3 or more Ice Barrier monsters you control are unaffected by the activated effects of your opponent's monsters that were special summoned from the extra deck, which is an insanely good effect just to give your Ice Barriers a little bit of protection. We then play 3 copies of Winds Over the Ice Barrier. So this card is really, really good because it has some really nice effects. It has the ability to contribute any number of your Ice Barrier monsters special summoned from your deck, that many level 4 or lower Ice Barrier monsters with different names. And then during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your grave, target 1 Ice Barrier monster that is banished in your graveyard, and add it back to your hand, which is really good just to be able to get you additional plays, which is why I even play this card in the deck as a 3-of, is because of its graveyard effect. The main card effect is okay, but the graveyard effect is where the card really excels. We then play 3 copies of Medallion. Medallion is a must 3-of because this card searches any Ice Barrier monster. It's very simplistic. It searches anything in the deck. It turns pretty much your Speaker into a 6-of. It turns your copy of Revealer into a 6-of. It turns your copy of General Wayne. Like, you can search anything. It doesn't restrict level or anything. It just searches any card you need. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Fiendish Chain, which is really good, and 3 copies of Crackdown, because you have to have a little bit of kind of control in the deck. So the Crackdowns are going to be able to take your opponent's monsters to be able to use the Synchro material to get out your copy of Super Trish or regular Trish, Bryonic, Gungnir, whatever you need, depending on what you're playing against, how good this card is. And then Fiendish Chain is just a little bit of a negation. We didn't get any hand traps in this deck, so the Fiendish Chains and the Crackdowns kind of have to make up for that a little bit, where the copies of Fiendish Chain just negate the effects of one monster, and then that monster cannot be, its effects cannot be activated, which is pretty cool, just negates the effect, and it can't attack, which is pretty cool, and then the Crackdown takes your opponent's monster, which is kind of ironic because Freezing Chains, Fiendish Chain kind of works. This deck is all about chains, but it's kind of cool. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So the extra deck is going to be very, very simplistic because we only got 4, I believe, extra or 5 extra deck monsters. So we're going to be playing 3 copies of Super Trish because you play 3 copies of Super Trish because you have 3 copies of Super Trish and you don't have anything else. In the regular deck, you'd probably play like 1, but what it does is when it's Synchro Summon, you can banish up to 3 cards your opponent controls, and if this card, Synchro Summon card, in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can Special Summon 1 Trishula from your extra deck or graveyard, and its attack becomes 3,300, and then half its attack of any face-up monster your opponent controls, and also you negate their effects, which is really good. The only downside of this card is it doesn't count as a Synchro Summon when you Special Summon Trish. I feel like that would have helped the deck a lot, is if it would have counted as a Synchro Summon, and then Trish would have just banished 3 more cards, which would have been nice. It would have been a little OP, but I still think it would have been insanely good. So we're only going to be playing 1 Trish because Trish is still at 1 as of the time of recording, but it's still really good that when you Synchro Summon this card, you can banish up to 3 cards, each from your opponent's hand, field, and grave. And this card, it's your choice from their hand, but the choice is at random. But the choice is at random from the hand, which is still pretty good just to be able to get you an additional play. We then play 3 copies of Gungnir because you got 3 copies of Gungnir. Its ability is once per turn, you can discard up to 2 cards, then target the same number of cards your opponent controls and destroy them, which is pretty good just to be able to pop stuff on the field. And then we play 3 copies of Bryonic. Bryonic is really, really good in the deck. It's probably my favorite of all the Ice Barrier Dragons, and I really want you guys to comment down below and tell me what your favorite of the 3 Ice Barrier Dragons is. I think my favorite is Bryonic because I think Bryonic is the only one that I ever pulled from a pack back in the day, and it's just an overall really good card. I have really very fond memories of summoning Bryonic and using it before its errata when it was banned for a while. Like, all of these cards have been on the list at one point except for the 0 Trish, but Trishula's been banned, I believe, at one point. I know it's at 1 now. This, I think this is the only one that hasn't been hit, and this one was banned for a while too, which is kind of weird. But you can discard any number of cards from your hand to the graveyard to target the same number of cards your opponent controls and return them to the hand, and you can only use this card's name effect once per turn, which is still pretty good. We then play 3 copies of the Wolf Tiger King of the Ice Barrier. This card is really good because it has the ability that you can target any number of face-up cards you control. Return those targets to the hand. If you do, this card gains 500 attack for each return card to your hand by this effect until the end phase of the turn. So this card can get pretty big, and it has an overall really awesome effect just to be able to get those cards to your hand, or get those cards back to your hand and resolve its effect. And it's level 6 Synchro, so it's pretty easy to get out on your side of the field. So that's it for the deck, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I will mention you guys as well about Tiger King. It actually combos very well with your continuous traps, like your copy of Crackdown, Fiendish Chain, and your copies of your Freezing Chains. It works very well with those because it lets you reuse them. It kind of reminds me of Tellarknight Trevere, but it's really, really good to be able to combo those. So that's pretty much it for this deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. Be on the lookout for the full-on Ice Barrier deck that's not the budget build, because I wanted to do a budget build of this, guys. You know I always do every time we get a structure deck, and we're going to be doing a regular build of this next, and we've already got the opening, which you guys should definitely check out as well. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on your scene, become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.